Ladies and gentlemen, this is Reaction. This is okay again. Like I'm not in my studio, and sometimes work is too lengthy, and sometimes I don't have time to go to studio. So I decided to start making videos whenever I can on mobile as well. So this is another mobile one. If there is issue with this, like comment down. Feedback would be valuable. So this is from the Redeemed Zoomer. I've been reacting to Redeemed Zoomer recently with religious perspective type of thing, especially Christianity. And this is everything explained in 10 minutes. I'm guessing this is like Bill Woods type of thing, where he explains basically in his format, which is really good. I haven't seen anybody else try it, and Bill Woods just stopped doing that. He just makes music now, so this is good. More people should use this formula because it's best thing about Bill Woods video was it was like in middle. There was no emotions you can feel from it, just like some guy best was summarizing things, which is like awesome. When we talked about anything, whether it's religion or anything, it was always fun the way he did it. Like as summary go, he was like the best summarizer, and this is like really good. Reading Zuma does a really great job at basically doing something like that, so this is gonna be similar. So yeah, let's watch this one. Remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so that way I know which type of videos to react to more. If you want me to do any specific video, definitely comment down. Eventually I will get to it. And yeah, let's watch it.
Often interested in this stuff, so they make different ways to learn about different things. But what if it's all connected, and what if there's a way?
Okay, chemistry, study of matter. Yeah, makes sense. Biology. Biology is just like complex form of chemistry. History, obviously, geology, geography, and yeah, astronomy. Yep, study of space. Okay, you forgot the main thing, physics, which is like father of them all, but okay.
To understand everything. So where should we start? Well, right now you're using a computer device to watch this, so let's talk about technology, which is the stuff people make to solve problems. Your computer uses a code to store information and organizes that code so that it can figure stuff out and do certain things.
Okay, people might think why binary, right? A computer can easily understand if it's like 1, 10, 11, 10, and basically in that format 1010, right? This is how 1010 goes, right? There's 1, and then there is 10, then there is 11, right? Then it goes back to also adding 0 type of thing. There is no like 2 to 9 thing isn't there, right? It does have 10, it does have 100, it does have 1000, but it stays with this format, which is like if you think like why make it like this, isn't that complicated? No, it's not. For a computer who would process really fast, this is the most fastest way of doing things, and that's why computers are really insanely fast because of this.
It does the thinking so you don't have to. People always use technology to solve problems. Is there a river in your way? Build a bridge. Is it too hot? Make a fan. Does your enemy have strong weapons? Make better weapons. Most great inventions happened because they needed to happen, and technology keeps getting better because inventions always build on each other. Okay, but who's making all this technology?
Okay, I kind of like agree with him and also disagree with him. Inventions, some of them happen because it's matter of survival, sure, but most invention happen because somebody is just curious. Some scientist, somebody was just, I wonder what happens here. And it's like, when you play video game, like really fun video game, and first thing is like, I can't wait to go back home and play that again for 8 hours. Those are scientists in their, leading field. They cannot wait to see what happens next and do experiment and think about that area because they have tools and expertise, brain power to do that. None of them care about any technology or anything of advancement of the future. They just care about going to a certain specific point, and that leads to technology. No Einstein or Newton thought about anything what could IT revolution or anything, but they still did it. Without Einstein, there is no IT revolution, right? There is no quantum world, right? So the basically things happen because there are smarter people who likes worry thinking about the world. We see virtual world video games and get interested in that, but it's not real, it's fake, somebody made it, and we just have fun with that. Imagine if you're so smart, you're doing that with the real world. Real world is your video game, you're trying to figure shit out. That's what basically what happens.
It's people, of course. Technology is the study of things people make. That means that at the core of technology is the humanities, which is the study of people and what they do. For example, taking things people have done and connecting the dots to see how one thing leads to another thing is called history. History's not just studying the past, but telling stories and seeing how the past connects to the present. Speaking of stories, let's talk about literature, which is stories that people tell in an organized way that other people find interesting enough to repeat. Stories are usually written down, which brings us to linguistics. Humans make weird noises to represent ideas that they have, and when two humans use the same weird noises, then congrats, you have a language. Sometimes people don't understand each other.
About the history thing, people are not interested in history in schools and things. I was one of them before I realized what history really is. People need to explain history to kids basically that history is not just like why do I care what Henry the Eighth or whatever did. No, it's not about that. It's like human psychology. History is study of human psychology and how humanity works as a whole. You can see patterns, you can make judgment based on that, you can see similarities with other histories, you can learn about how humans work, how politics works, right, what happened in what wars. It can make you literally smarter, because if something happens in today's world, just observing history you can basically make judgment that will help you and basically around you based on that. History is really good. It's not just something like remembering what somebody did. I don't give a fuck what somebody did in the past. It's not about knowing what they did in the past. It's about actually studying how humans work.
And in that case, you have different languages. So different
Oh.
places have different languages, which makes sense because you probably want to hang out with people you can understand. That means there's different cultures all around the world. Art shows you what a culture looks like. Music shows you what a culture sounds like. Cuisine shows you what a culture tastes like. And dance shows you what a culture feels like. So at the core of the humanities is humans. That should be obvious. But what exactly is a human? For that, we need to learn biology. Biology is all about living things. What counts as a living thing? Well, it's got to be made out of cells. It needs to be able to do stuff, and for that it needs energy. It needs to be able to keep balance. It needs to be able to grow, and it needs to be able to make more of itself. There's many different types of living things. Do they all get along? Oh yeah, they get along great. Just kidding. They need to kill each other to survive. But nothing lives forever anyway, so most things just care about living.
Pretty sure it's a Redeem Zoomer video where I talked about like how was it Redeem Zoomer or was it Casual Geographic one? I don't know. Where I talked about how food chain is one of the most insane thing that can happen, right? And somehow it has happened. And I guess it makes sense at a broader spectrum because if things are living, things are going to live because they have those living things to eat and survive. If your food source is something different, then I guess that can run out and everybody could die. Food chain implies that you might get to the lowest point of the chain but still somewhat survive. It kind of makes sense, but it's still fucked up, right? So that is really interesting.
Long enough to reproduce. Okay, but how do living things reproduce? Well, it's all because of DNA. DNA is the blueprint for how to build a brand new living thing, and it exists inside all living things. Okay, but that's a lot of information. Where is all that information stored? Is there like a book somewhere or a hard drive? No, it's stored in very complex chemicals, and the proteins that read that information are also chemicals. That means at the root of biology is chemistry. Chemistry is the study of what things are made out of. Everything's made out of atoms, but there's different types of atoms called elements. Atoms are the building blocks for different molecules, which are the building blocks for every kind of substance. Sometimes different molecules will meet each other and exchange atoms to make new molecules. This is called a chemical reaction. Okay, but why are there different kinds of atoms? To answer that, we need to look at what atoms themselves are made out of. Different atoms have different numbers of protons in the middle. Neutrons are there too, so that the center of the atom doesn't explode. Electrons are floating around the center, and they're the thing that makes atoms bond with each other to form those molecules I was talking about earlier. The center of an atom is called the nucleus, but for some atoms, the nucleus is so big that the atom becomes unstable. If the nucleus breaks, it releases a crap ton of energy, which is used in both nuclear power and nuclear explosions. So these atoms are held together by physical forces and interact with each other because of physical forces. So at the root of chemistry is physics, which is all about how things move and move each other. Forces move things around. The more mass a thing has, the harder it is to move. Mass tells you how much stuff there is in a thing. Oh yeah, and things also attract each other. The more mass...
E equals mc squared is one of the most insane thing that is, right? Mass energy is the same. So when we think about moving stuff, basically we're trying to transfer energy. Now how much energy it takes to change its state, basically in this case movement, is based on how much mass it has, right? So if you have some really heavy, let's say like 100 kilo object, you're trying to push it, you're really trying your hard but it's not moving, which means the energy that it requires to basically change its state, you're not giving it that much energy. So energy is going there but not enough. It's a weird way of saying, but that's basically scientific way of saying it, right? Before Einstein, nobody was thinking this, but E equals mc squared simplifies a lot of things based on that, which is like really insane. When you think about it, everything becomes simplistic in that way.
The thing has, the more attractive it is. All of us are on this big ball of rocks, so gravity makes us attracted to it because we're close to it. But if you were on a different ball of rocks, gravity would attract you to that. If you're kind of close to something but not that close, gravity makes you go in a circle around it. That's why the moon circles around the Earth and the Earth circles around the sun.
I won't say it like what? I don't, what? That's not how. That's not why it happens, right? Gravity is more like if you put heavy object on your bed basically mattress, it creates this kind of like a circular drop, right? The more close to it, the more intense it is. That's what gravity is. Curvature of space-time. Space-time is not really empty in that way, right? Like how if the fish in the ocean thought water doesn't exist because that's the common thing, common denominator, whatever, right? So they wouldn't recognize water as a thing. They would say there's nothing here. Well, no, there's water. Space is in a kind of way that is, right? And it goes into circle because moon is at just perfect speed for that distance to stay in that circle rather than get either going way far away if the speed was high, if the low would go way too close and crash into earth basically. It's not because if it's in the distance that's why it go in circle, because it formed in that way, right? Because whenever whatever object collided with earth, basically it created this ball and the debris was already spinning in that way, right? It went farther, it went closer and just equalized where it is right now.
Our sun is just one of billions and billions of stars, and gravity pulls the stars into galaxies. There's billions and billions of galaxies all over the universe, and there's also a lot of other really cool things too. And all of these things are always in motion. So basically, physics explains that the entire universe is just balls of stuff floating around and bumping into each other. Quantum physics suggests that the smallest balls aren't actually balls, but rather clouds of maybe. But how do we know what's going to bump into what and what's going to go where and how strong is each thing and how fast is it going? We need to make calculations. So to understand
Balls is not really like you would say balls, but I would suggest that spheres are like the shapeless things there is. They don't have an edge. They're equal from the center in all sides. So it would make sense how everything's spherical, because why wouldn't it be? If it's anything but spherical, that would raise question like why is it different? Why is one point from the center is a different size than the other?
physics, you need to understand mathematics. Math is, of course, the study of numbers. What's a number? Well, I can't show you a number. I can show you symbols that represent numbers, but that's not the same. You can't perceive numbers with any of your five senses, but don't worry, you can still perceive them with your mind. You can add numbers to each other to make new numbers. You can also do this in reverse, but if you do that too hard, you'll end up with negative numbers. You can also multiply numbers, where you add the first number to itself, the second number of times. And you can do this in reverse too, but if you do that too hard, you'll end up with fractions. And you can do exponents, where you multiply the first number by itself, the second number of times. And of course you can do this in reverse, but if you do that too hard, you might end up with irrational numbers, which are numbers that go on forever, but have no pattern that we can recognize. More on that later. Algebra is what you use when you have too many numbers to keep track of, so you make very...
Yeah, think like this, right? If you were cutting an object, right, in some pieces, and you do it like unreasonably cut it something, but you also want something like same shapes of all objects, that's not going to happen, right? So numbers is basically like that. If you cut it that way, it will be just like, continuous, non-ending. I guess that's the anomaly, because math is kind of like the tool we created, so that it's bound to have some anomalies. It can't be that perfect. Basically that's the reason, or that's the reason I can think of.
Variables to represent them, so you can put them together in an equation to see how they relate to each other, and maybe make a graph out of it. But sometimes the graphs get really crazy. What if I want to know how steep the line is right over here? You need calculus for that. You just take the derivative of the line. Geometry is the study of shapes. A rectangle has four sides that all intersect at right angles, and you can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out how long the diagonal is. A square is a type of rectangle where all the sides are equal length. A triangle is just any shape with three sides, but they're actually so important there's a whole field of math named after them, because they're important for understanding angles. Finally, a circle is a shape where every point in the shape is equally distant from the center. To find the area of the circle, take the radius, square it, and multiply it by this weird number pi to get the area. Pi is weird because it's one of those irrational numbers we talked about earlier. Pi goes on forever and forms no repeating pattern. You see what this means, don't you? It means that every possible combination of numbers exists somewhere in pi. And if you use numbers as code for letters, that means every possible combination of letters also exists encoded in pi. And if that's true, if every possible combination of letters is there, then every book that has ever been written exists somewhere encoded in pi. Not only that.
I mean, there's a weird way of looking. Pi is infinite, right? The number, right, is never ending. So in that way, it can contain anything. But I don't think that's the way of looking at it. I don't know. I've seen him struggle with the pi, but yeah.
But every book that ever possibly could be written exists somewhere in pi. There are books, better than any book any human has ever written, that exist in the infinite string of numbers that exists in pi. You see what this means, right? Mathematics is infinite. It contains infinite information. Where is all this information stored? It can't...
No, when you multiply or do things like that, it has this kind of a continuous format to it. So if it's not perfect, like this kind of rational numbers, it will go on forever, and that way you can get an infinite number. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the struggle here. I don't know why people struggle with this.
Be in our finite universe. Remember earlier we said math only exists in the mind? This infinite information can only be contained in an infinite mind, and that mind is what we call God. The fact that math governs the universe has caused some people to...
Again, God of the gaps, alright? I don't get it. Like, if you don't understand something, if it feels like too much to you, like concept of infinity, you'll basically associate God with it. That's not the way of looking at it. I don't know. He has done this with the math, like explaining things with the math. This is like similar to that. I'm like, come on. I don't agree with
it.
it.
A computer simulation, but that doesn't explain how math is infinite. Math must exist in an infinite mind, so at the core of math is theology, and theology is the one field that unifies all the other fields. This is why the medieval church called theology the queen of the sciences. They studied theology because they were studying God, but studying God led to studying all other fields because the world is God's creation, and this is why the medieval Western church actually started modern science. Theology is the study of God. God is classically defined as...
Okay. Christianity in church was the most dominant form and the center of the civilization for lots of Western civilization. So it wouldn't surprise many people that church started a lot of things, right? Because church was the thing that every Christian cling on to. Most people were Christian in the Western world, so it's not that hard to understand. This, the Julian calendar were like perfected by Pope and his Jesuit priests, right? Because they were like some form of like an official government type of thing, because they were governing Catholics, right? So it's, he's trying to do, associate math and science into like must be God. This is not a new concept. God of the gaps exists because people always associate that. Science is not complete, nowhere near. It's like we're barely scratching it. We are at a point where there is a saying, the more you discover, the more you don't know, because the horizon is even bigger now of the unknown, right? We are nowhere near. We are not even at the middle of how much we can know in science, right? So there is going to be a lot of unknown, but you can't just say like that's God. Maybe, but there is no reason to think like that, right? Even if you believe in God, and I know there are a lot of scientists who does believe in God, not in your basically religious way, but they will never come out and say like I completely believe in God, because people will take it like out of context. But they like the concept of some kind of higher being. Only thing I can think of is like you can explain everything with something, like where this come from, where the atom come from, right? Nucleus, quarks. You can chip away and there is something that's going to be origin of them all. But physical world cannot be infinite, right? Infinity doesn't exist in the real world. So if you chip away everything, there has to be like the starting point, and starting point can't make sense in our laws of physics, right? Because what is the start of that, right? So in that way you can think like there must be something that doesn't make sense with our laws of physics that was at the beginning of them all. At least that what the simplistic way of thinking makes sense. So people believe in God is not that problematic, But just like finding God in anything that you don't understand is not the way of doing it. Infinite math exists because it's our tool, we created it. There's going to be anomalies in it. Doesn't mean like pi is like manifestation of like there must be this is God. No, that's not true.
Is that than which nothing greater can be conceived. In other words, God is the being that is infinite in every way. He's infinitely powerful, infinitely good, and has an infinite mind, like we already said. So math is applied theology, and physics is applied math. Chemistry is applied physics, biology is applied chemistry, the humanities are applied biology, and technology is applied humanities. Almost anything you can think of probably falls on.
Yep, there you go, end of the video. This chart is completely fucking wrong. Physics at the center of everything. Physics is the father of all sciences. Math is the tool we understand physics and the thing around it. Theology is not center of it, man. Theology is not some hard science, right? Science is not just something that you put a tag on it, this is science, and you can just ignore it. Science literally means knowledge of everything that emerges everywhere, doesn't matter who does it. That is the closest thing to a fact or truth we can get. Every time somebody says this is scientific fact, there are no facts. Yeah, I get it, but you're being pedantic at this point. We are talking about if anybody does it in any part of the world or in different universe, they'll get the same result. That is as fact as you're gonna get. And physics is the center of everything. Math is just a tool we created. Right? We are perfecting math, right? That's why things like calculus and things like was later discovered. We might discover more tools going forward as well. That is perfecting math. But right now, math is not that perfect. It's not gonna be rational numbers. But that is not the proof of like this is God or theology is the center of it. That's just weird way of looking at it. Alright, well that was everything explained in 10 minutes by the channel Redeem Zoomer. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.